There are a couple pictures out here of a boy named Kumar. He's from Bangalore, India. He was sold as a slave as a younger child. He worked in a brick kiln. Kumar's resilience is amazing to me. Here's someone who was an orphan, was taken advantage of and sold as a slave as a child. He told me that he knew that if he had his parents, that this wouldn't be happening, that they would stick up for him, that he'd be able to go to school, he'd be able to play with other kids. IJM was able to work with local authorities to go in and rescue Kumar out, and then to prosecute the slave owner, hold him accountable for his crimes. Kumar has a brand new life now. I asked him what he wanted to do. He just lit up and he said, well, I want to go to school and I want to be the best in my class and I want to be a police officer so I can catch all the bad guys and protect the good people of my village.
Hello, I'm Georges Collinet with a special edition of On the Move. That was photographer Ted Haddock. In most countries, slavery was abolished in the late 1800s. Here in Washington, D.C., a few blocks from the World Bank, on April 19, 1866, President Andrew Johnson signed the abolition of slavery. Over 5,000 African Americans paraded in front of the White House. We like to think that slavery is a thing of the past, and yet there is a new form of slavery found all over the world. It's called human trafficking. To raise awareness about exploitation and human trafficking, from sex tourism to forced labor, the World Bank presented a symposium and a photo and documentaries exhibit entitled Borderless Captivity, Exploitation and Human Trafficking. Representatives from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, the International Justice Mission, the Ricky Martin Foundation, as well as renowned experts, discussed the horrors of exploitation and human trafficking. Why is the World Bank, a financial institution, involved in an exhibition on human trafficking?
We are always trying to find themes that are relevant for the bank mission.
Marina Galvani, art curator of the World Bank Art Program.
We consider that as a World Bank art program, we are part of the units that are trying to fight poverty, and one way we can do that is to raise awareness, and we try to raise awareness not through the rational means only, but through the emotional and the visuals. I think the World Bank has an incredible power, not only of acting in countries, but even of simply with their presence to make clear that a topic is important. I've seen over and over, when we are presenting an exhibition on a subject, people start to realize that, it's not only an NGO, only with all respect, an NGO or a humanitarian organization doing that. It's the World Bank. The World Bank is supposed to be very, very rational. If they are looking at that, it means that this has an impact on society that goes beyond the humanitarian aspect. And it's very powerful.
Johannes Kottel, World Bank economist.
This is a very new issue for the bank. We are carefully thinking about what we could do. And whatever we want to decide to do, I think we want to work through partnerships with other governments, with other international organizations, and with NGOs, because these organizations already have a lot of expertise and comparative advantages, and we want to complement those. And our mandate does not always allow us to directly engage in that fight, and there we also need partnerships with other organizations.
Human trafficking is modern-day slavery. However, it is more insidious than the horrific slave trades of the past, as the victims are usually kept hidden from the rest of the society. But who are these everyday people kept in anonymous captivity? How can we recognize them?
Essentially, we're talking about people that are forced to work under threat of violence for no pay beyond subsistence.
Benjamin Skinner is the author of the book A Crime So Monstrous, Face to Face with Modern Slavery.
The primary difference is that now every country on earth has established that it is illegal, has called it a crime against humanity, and yet today there are more slaves than ever before. What we were talking about here today at the bank is a great start. The elements of modern-day slavery need to be addressed, both of the primary factors. First of all, we're talking about withering poverty and underdevelopment, social isolation. These are issues that that speak to the bank's core competency and that they can address directly. And then there's also the issue of the criminality, of the criminals who come in and take advantage of those vulnerabilities. And what needs to happen with those criminals is there needs to be more robust enforcement to break their backs on this issue.
The photo exhibit presents the work of 8 photographers and a videographer who have documented this tragedy around the world. Kate Chernish, photographer.
I traveled first to Hong Kong and Macau, then Thailand, India, and Italy. And I photographed trafficking in its many different guises. Everything from sex exploitation, sex tourism, child labor, bonded labor, people who are locked in sweatshops and not paid and abused, and all kinds of labor exploitation. As difficult as it was physically and emotionally, the subject kind of grabbed me. I am continuing to try and find a way of photographing sex trafficking, working with survivors. The shame and horror of it runs very deep. My challenge is to find a way to photograph the experience rather than the girls themselves, and to make people see that this is not about sex at all. It is about force and violence and coercion and degradation of human life.
How to alleviate the suffering and exploitation of these women and children and eliminate the curse of human trafficking? It is going to take the resolve of organizations like the UN and of people like Latin superstar Ricky Martin.
The Ricky Martin Foundation is very fortunate to have Ricky Martin as our leader.
Angel Santos, executive director of Ricky Martin Foundation.
With his power of convocation, he can communicate these messages to the general population, as well to the governments, authorities, and everybody who is involved in this problem and that could bring solutions to the table. We have been fortunate enough to be partnered with very important institutions. One of them is the Inter-American Development Bank, and today we are here at the World Bank, the most important global financial institution. We will partner for future activities to combat this problem.
All over the world, from the Americas, including the United States, to places in the Far East and Europe, 27 million men, women, and children are forced to work without pay, threatened with terrible violence to feed the greed of their masters, and unable to walk away. Human trafficking is so elusive that most of us are unaware of it. As photographer Kate Chernish wrote, "I had no idea of the extent, the insidiousness, or the sheer human complexity of this problem. The plight of these women and children touches me. Their resilience inspires me." I'm Georges Collinet. On the Move is a production of the World Bank Group.